विकसित भारत 2047 एक ध्येय एक सपन गोयचो फुडार बळकट करपाचो भारत देश विकसित करपाचो तुई भी ह्या मोहिमेन वांटेकार जा गोयचो विकास घडोवपाक तुई आपले योगदान दी आपल्यो आयडियाज वा सजेशन्स दिवपाक गोवा ऑनलायन पोर्टलाचेर वचून विजन डॉक्युमेंट तयार करपाक तुझे मोलादीक योगदान दी विकसित भारत 2047.
A very good evening to all the viewers out there. I know it's been a long time that I've been with the Prudent now. But yes, this is after almost 2 years that I've got a very special guest with me. The reason why I have him with me is not because what's happening back in India at the moment, but because after traveling the globe, he's coming to Australia once again. A stand-up comedian by profession, Daniel Fernandes, of course, Fernandes, no connection there. We are all friends. Daniel Fernandes is coming to Australia to participate in the Sydney Comedy Festival as well as the Melbourne Comedy Festival. But other than that, this is the first time that he is going to be actually performing for the Goan diaspora, both in Sydney and in Melbourne. Daniel, how does that feel?
Oh, it's always a great feeling to be able to get on stage. And I've been doing this for 14 years now. So no matter how many times I do it, every time I get on stage, it still feels like the first time. And Australia has always been special to me. I've been traveling there since 2016. And I am very happy to return again this year for the Sydney Comedy Festival and a one-off show in Melbourne on May 2nd. So yeah, always a pleasure to come down to Australia. I think outside of Goa, Australia has the best beaches.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And I'm pretty sure on your Australia tour, you've got a few days out to venture onto the beaches here in Melbourne or in Sydney.
Hopefully, I'll be able to make some time maybe during the long weekends. But even if I go to the beach, there's no chance I'm going into the water because the sun may be shining, but the water is icy cold. So there's no, I just cannot do it. Like last year, I was in Sydney. We went to Bondi Beach and we saw people in bikinis and swimming trunks, and they're just frolicking in the water like it's not -5 degrees. So maybe,
All right.
if I spend more time in Australia, I'll be able to get used to the water. But so far, all my beach escapades have been from a distance. I sit on the shore and enjoy the view. That's it.
Okay, so I already more or less know as to what to treat you with once you are in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Okay. The beach and the waters. Okay, nothing to fear about. Nothing to fear about. Now tell us, what are your plans for connecting with the Goan diaspora, especially in Melbourne? And I'm pretty sure in Sydney also there are a lot of Goans who are eagerly waiting to witness your performance at the Sydney Comedy Festival.
Yeah. So whenever I have performed in Australia, I've always had a mixed audience. You have people, local Australians, we've had Indians and people from other parts of the world as well. And of course, Goans as well. And this time I want to reach out a little wider to the Goan community because I know there's so many of us all over the world. And I think for an artist coming out of Goa to get an opportunity like this to, feature in some of the biggest comedy festivals in the world is a big deal. The last famous cultural export of Goa was Remo Fernandes. And now it's time for a new Fernandes, to take his place only in terms of occupation, not talent. But if I can get more of my people coming in, I think this is more of a celebration. It's always good to see our people go far and wide, and I think it's a reason to celebrate. So I want every Goan watching this to consider this a personal invitation to come watch this show and celebrate one of our own on a stage like this.
Well, I have been talking to some of my colleagues back in Sydney and also here in Melbourne. And the buzzword is let's roll out a red carpet for another Fernandes, Daniel Fernandes.
That is very kind.
All right, Daniel. Now, you've in the past you've participated in the comedy festivals in Sydney and in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Uh, how has the Australian audience accepted you or received your comedy in the past? Any memorable moments that you can share?
I think I've been very blessed to have been able to perform not just in Melbourne, Sydney, but Perth, Brisbane, and a bunch of other towns, both on Western Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, as part of the Melbourne Comedy Festival road shows. So I have probably seen more of Australia than I've seen of India at this point. And everywhere I have traveled, I have had nothing but very warm a very warm reception from the audience, especially the non-Indian uh, audience. Because it's one thing when you're performing in front of an Indian crowd, they know it's you, you are comfortable with them, it's our people kind of vibe. But when it's a non-Indian crowd, when it's a hardcore Australian audience, that's a very different group of people, and it could be intimidating. But I've been really lucky to have received a lot of love from Australia, no matter where I've performed. I'm not even saying this for the sake of saying this. Like I know a lot of people say things to especially when you're doing an interview like this, but this is a genuine truth. And it's so funny because whenever you would hear of Australia, like maybe a decade or so earlier, it was a little bit of a scary place for an Indian to visit because of what was happening back then. And I have traveled almost every place that's worth visiting in Australia, and I've not experienced any of that stuff, you know. So it has genuinely been a very fruitful and enriching experience, and I'm really looking forward to coming back. Like I want to make this a habit. I want to make Australia an annual event. So it's been happening now for the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm keen to kind of really lock that in and grow my audience to not just Indians but anybody who who can understand what I'm saying, because the material that I write is not for a Hindi speaking crowd at all. It's for everyone. I want to be a global comedian. I want everybody who speaks and understands English to come have a seat in the at my show and have a good time.
Ah, well, you summed up. This is something that I think both Melbourne and Sydney have accepted a lot of Indian comedians, stand-up comedians,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and 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 you coming out over here all the way from India, not the first time, not the second time, not the third time, but I think this is your fifth or the sixth time that you're coming. But this time, sixth time,
Yeah.
is it? But
I think this.
okay, but this time, outside the comedy festival, you're doing
Mhm.
an exclusive show for the Goan community. What can they expect?
So this show, which is called "Do You Know Who I Am," is a show that's very close to my heart. It's for anybody who's into intelligent, smart, dark humor. And in this show, I talk about grief and intergenerational trauma and my own personal journey as a comedian, and all packed into a nice hour of comedy. So I think this is the first show that I have written that is relatable to everybody. It's impossible to escape the material in this show, and that's what gets me very excited to perform it. So I'm hoping to see as many of my Goan brothers and sisters in the audience as possible, because I know that by the time the show is done, they're going to be feeling very proud that they are from the same neck of the woods as me.
Well, since your promos have already started, and a lot of people have been who have been in the past following you, and they've come to know that you are traveling to Australia and having an exclusive show for the Goan community. Yes, there is a sense of buzz at the moment, and everyone is eagerly waiting to come and witness your performance. So we are all keeping our fingers crossed and hoping to see you in action out here. Okay,
Oh,
but
definitely.
this is more of uh, what we are going to be expecting from you. Uh, in India now, what's happening? Okay, uh, there's so much thing that's happening, And at one stage, I feel like, is that tribe going to die down at some point of time with whatever that's happening at the moment?
So right now we're in a place where comedians are being held accountable more than politicians, which is a different kind of comedy in itself. And as a comedian, I'm going on the ride. I'm coming on this ride and seeing where it takes me. And I'm looking for the humor wherever there is any to find, and I'm making jokes about it. I think that's what any comedian wants to do, is basically just tell jokes. What's happening in India has happened before in other countries as well, because uh, it takes a very secure person to be able to laugh at themselves and at what's happening in the world with them, right? People who react negatively to laughter are basically just conveying that deep down inside they're very insecure. And this is very true of authoritarian governments, where they want to control everything. They want to control what you eat, what where you live, who you marry. But there's one thing in the world that nobody can control, is laughter. And for an authoritarian person, that is a very scary thing, because laughter is basically agreement. When I tell you a joke on stage and you laugh, in a way you are agreeing with that point of view. You are also releasing uh, uh, ideas and thoughts about this subject that you had in your own head. That's why you laugh. So some people fear that laughter, because that laughter cannot be controlled. It cannot be, muzzled. And so what they then do is they try to attack the person who's saying uh, these things, or they try to attack the place where these shows are happening, in the hope that we will cower in fear, quit our comedy careers, and then get a regular 9 to 5 job. That's not going to happen. You can huff and puff all you want. Comedians are not going anywhere. Comedy isn't going anywhere. The truth isn't going anywhere. Even if no one's speaking it, it is right there in front of all of us to see. So yeah, this is just another day in the life of an Indian comedian, as far as I'm concerned. I've dealt with controversies myself, and I've dealt with politicians and the mob, and you get used to it. You get used to it. Like this, if you go to the Amazon, you get used to mosquitoes. You don't leave the Amazon, right? It's still a beautiful place. So India is still a beautiful country with beautiful people. So none of us are going to stop doing what we are doing because of a few mosquitoes.
Yeah, but coming on to my question, it's more about the venues attacked, ransacked. You
Yeah.
had the ticketing platforms withdrawing,
Yeah.
uh, threats, okay, police cases.
Yeah.
Do you think that those stand-up comedians like you or several others who are facing that heat are
Hmm.
ultimately going to cow down? And where does that leave the entire tribe?
I I don't see any of us, cowering and giving in to what the mob wants beyond a certain point. For example, when a few months ago, last year, when I was in the crossfire, the only reason why I apologize is because the mob started targeting the venues, the producers, the audience, people I work with. So I can't have someone else's safety compromised because of me. So that is the only reason why I said sorry. But other than that, in a world where free speech is absolute, or free speech is respected and upheld by the law, it would be a very different scenario. But here, it's kind of like, you got to figure out how to navigate these waters based on what outcome you're hoping to have. But like I said, I mean, there's only so much you can muzzle the truth. So I don't see any of us going away. I think, if anything, comedians will just find a smarter way to say what they want to say. And that's what we've always been doing. So this too shall pass.
Absolutely, and we all hope and pray that that this particular phase just passes off uh, uh, in time. But sticking to India now, do you think that Indians have actually lost their sense of humor, or is it more that the Indian politicians are so absurd that they practically write their own uh, punchlines?
Uh, if you, it depends on what context you're examining the Indian audience. Look, if you're examining an Indian audience in the context of online viewership, then yes, the people who are online largely, a lot of people don't understand what stand up is as an art form. They don't understand the difference between a joke and a speech. So they look at us standing on stage and they think we are giving a speech or we mean every word we say literally. A joke is literally something you do not mean. So it's the opposite. So it is these people, when they watch stand up and they don't understand how the art form works, they start getting angry, they get worked up, they gather a mob, and that's when we see what's happening. But if you examine the Indian audience from the lens or the context of a live comedy show, people who buy tickets, sit in the audience, and listen to what we have to say, they are some of the best audiences in the world. And you can ask any comedian who's performed both in India and internationally, they will tell you Indian audiences at a comedy club or at a theater or at a stadium are some of the smartest audiences you will find anywhere in the world. So there are two different groups of people that are in question here. So I think it's very unfair that the actions of a minority, a smaller group of people, are making it look like the entire country does not have a sense of humor. You know, like if you walk on the street in India or even in Goa back home and we're all hanging out with our friends at the Gado or having ras omelette or, just chilling by the beach, how are we not laughing? We're all laughing within our own friends. Somebody is saying something that's funny, and we're all kind of ribbing each other. So Indians definitely have a sense of humor. It is if select few groups, of these right wing mobs or politicians who don't have a very thick skin, and they're very insecure, they're very weak, their self esteem or their self image is very low. I mean, look at somebody like a Barack Obama, right? He would sit in the White House for the White House Correspondents' Dinner and then have a comedian come and brutally roast him. And he's sitting there and he's laughing because he's confident in who he is as a person. The same cannot be said about Indian politicians. They are not confident. They, they take laughter as an insult. They take a joke as an insult. Whereas in a more intelligent and secure society, if you make fun of me, it's a sign of respect. If you roast me, it's a sign of respect that I am important enough for you to sit down and write a joke about. But let's not have a few people paint an image of India that is not true, because I firmly believe that Indians are a very culturally diverse people. They're very smart, they're very intelligent, and at least the ones that come to our shows, they're some of the best audiences I perform to anywhere in the world. So I would say that a certain group of people don't have a sense of humor, and hopefully in the long run they will catch up. But for the rest of us, we have been laughing a lot for a very long time. India, you open the newspaper, you look at what's happening in this country. That there's jokes there itself. India itself is a setup. The punchline is just updated every few hours from some news agency or the other.
You've traveled far and wide globally now. At any point of time, stand-up comedians from overseas ask you about or try to mock you at what's happening back in India?
No, they're curious. Whenever a controversy blows up, they're curious about what's happening, and they ask. They show a lot of empathy and ask if we are doing okay and stuff like that. Because this is not just happening in India; it's happening in countries like Malaysia as well, Philippines also. So a lot of countries where comedy is relatively new is facing a certain amount of resistance, and that resistance is understandable. So even comedians from scenes that are not having the kind of trouble we are, they're very empathetic about it. They understand. They're like, okay, it's a difficult time to be a comedian. Like even in the US right now, for that matter, um, a lot of comedians are holding back. A lot of comedians are playing it safe because
Yeah,
the powers that control the opportunities in that country are not going to take very kindly to you speaking out on the genocide in Gaza,
absolutely.
because stuff like that. So it's not like it's easy times everywhere else. I think every country is having some challenge or the other when it comes to comedy. So I think what I have observed is comedians, if anything, are very supportive. So when stuff keeps happening in India, there are comedians in America who talk about it on their podcast with a tone of support and not mockery. So that's a good thing to see. So I think
Good.
it's kind of like a brotherhood, isn't it? Yeah. No matter
Absolutely.
where you're from, at
Absolutely.
the end of the day, we kind of understand each other in a way that a person who's not a comedian. So that's nice to
I,
have.
no, it's good to have it, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I've got very little time, and this is definitely my last question to you.
Yeah.
Fernandes, your connection to Goa. Now, is that the rich culture of Goa and the history uh, prompt you to write your scripts before you perform?
I think for me, my material comes from my experiences in life. And yes, being Goan is a big part of that experience. I spent a lot of my formative years in Goa. So for me, Goa is home, and even if I'm not touring and, I get a chance, to spend some time in Goa, that is time well spent. So the material that I put out comes from everything that I've experienced all over the world and in my personal life. But Goa also is that cocoon that kind of holds me and gives me that rest that I need in between the madness of getting up on stage, getting into a plane, and then traveling all over the world. So Goa definitely in all aspects feels like a warm hug.
Absolutely. And who doesn't like to be in Goa?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You are in a place like Bangalore, and talking about Bangalore reminds me of Trevor Noah, who reached at the venue and couldn't perform when
Yeah.
everyone was eagerly waiting. But I hope
Yeah.
that's not happening with you.
Oh, no, 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 not at all. I work with producers who know what they're doing. Trevor, unfortunately, at that time wasn't kind of, they tied up with a producer who probably didn't do the recce that needed to be done and make sure things are okay. But these things happen in showbiz. And I think the company that produced Trevor's show have kind of bounced back because they then got Coldplay down as well. So they've kind of recovered. But I take a very active interest in the production of my shows to make sure stuff like this never happens.
Absolutely. And being a pro, definitely, I think these are things that you would take into consideration
Absolutely.
before any show.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
All right, Daniel, just a couple of weeks to go now for you to arrive here in
Yes.
Australia. And
Yes.
one thing that I can assure you is that the Goan community out here, not just the Goan community, but everyone who's seen you in the past have assured that they'll roll out a red carpet for you. Thank you very much for your time. And
Thank
we
you
hope to
for
see you on the
having
other
me.
side now soon.
Thank you so much for having me,
Okay.
Frankie. I look forward to catching up with you in Melbourne.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot once again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.